everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Why I Love Flagler County. Today, I'm super excited to have my guest, Wendy Ross, with us today. She is the owner of OP Sweet Treats. She's had that for a little bit over a year, and I saw her booth at the holiday market about, I would say like a week and a half, almost 2 weeks ago, or a week ago, something like that. Time's blending. And she just had the most amazing setup. So, Wendy, thank you so much for coming on and spending a few minutes. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm so honored. I mean, this is incredible.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Podcast can only be as like fun and good as the people who come on. And I'm really excited to talk about what you have. um,
Me too.
Great. So I would love for you to talk. So you've been in Florida your entire life, right?
Yeah, actually, I was born in Palaca. And my both my parents are from here. My family is here, so I just never felt the need to leave.
Right.
Moved around, been in Jacksonville, been Orange Park, which is where the OP comes from, and OP Sweet
Oh,
Treats,
okay.
and lived in Palaca most all of my life. It's just, I like the small town vibes. That's just kind of more my speed.
Yeah, well, that's
I
great. I
know
feel
the
like
rural.
yeah, I think especially like nowadays in the Flagler, Palm Coast, and maybe even some of
Mhm.
Palatka, you might know, a lot of us are not veteran. Like we're not born and raised. Like I feel like the Florida
Yeah,
veterans are
right.
like one out of like 20
A
nowadays.
lot of transplants. Yeah, transplants, right? Yeah.
Right, guilty as charged, but it's a great place. So I hope it's okay with you guys.
Oh, it really, I
Um,
mean, I know why people come here because, of the weather and just the gorgeous scenery, and Flagler and Palm Coast especially is just gorgeous.
Yeah, the beach is so close. I think it's a really great spot, especially as someone who comes from the north. I know people's biggest complaint about Florida is you don't get all four seasons. But I want to say like where we kind of are, like a little bit northeast,
Hmm.
we kind of get a good shift in variety where it can be super hot, but we can also get kind of a little bit of a cold front, a little bit of sweater weather for a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we get like a couple weeks maybe of like good fall weather. I mean, if you're driving
Yeah.
certain roads, you might get like, oh, there's some red on the trees, like that whole vibe. Like, um,
Yeah,
I think you're right, where we are, and even maybe a little north we get pretty lucky as far
I
as
think
that fourth
so.
season.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I think it's really important. So I don't like put all those expensive hoodies that I spent so much time and money
Right,
on in the past. They still
right.
get to be worn, which is awesome. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
when before we started recording, you were telling me that you've only had OP Sweet Treats for about a little bit over a year, which is huge. Congrats. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
actually, um, so I have been working in kitchens, specifically like mass production, banquet style, since I mean before I was legally able to touch all the equipment. I mean, I was young. I knew in high school that's what I wanted to do was work in a kitchen. And so for many years I worked in kitchens on the cook side, cooking. And we lived for a short while in Tampa, and I worked for a catering company, and just a small, husband and wife owned. And she ran the baking side, and a lot of times she would be short on help, and so I would go over and help her on the side. And I think that's kind of where um, it became a hobby for me, and that was
Mhm.
like I want to say 2012. Um, and from there, it just kind of grew, and I would start making like cupcakes for a baby shower or things for friends and family, and
Mhm.
um, it became more and more of a hobby. We moved to Jacksonville after that. I had my son actually, he will be 2 in January. So,
Oh, happy birthday. Wait, what day is his birthday?
January 19th.
Oh, my brother is January 23rd.
Oh,
So,
close.
yeah, right there around the corner. He's a little bit older than
Yeah.
two, but yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, he came in January, and I had done, as a working, person, I was looking into like daycares, different things, to put him in to go back to work. And I'm not gonna lie, you find a good one and they're like expensive. Childcare is not cheap. And so I talked to my husband and I said, what if we try to swing it on your salary for a year or two? He gets a little older, more independent, and I can go back to work and put him somewhere for a few hours a day, right? And so that's what we did. And so August of last year, when my son was about, what is that, 8 months old,
Yeah.
um, I talked to my husband and I said, what if I took my baking that I've been doing for years, friends and family, and kind of went to the public and made this cottage bakery, and that's how I
Mhm.
started. And so he said, well, if you want to bring in a little extra money, sure. And so I just kind of put myself out there, and it just snowballed. I mean, it was like people, word of mouth was huge, is huge. um and I've had so much fun doing it. And it's like, they say when you do what you love, right?
Right.
um and
Yeah.
it's stressful for sure. I mean, there are days where I'm like, why am I doing this is crazy. But I mean, it's been really awesome to see how it's all played out. I mean, even in this short amount of time.
Yeah, that's great. I'm so glad to hear. I mean, I kind of have a similar story in the sense that I told you I was working at my family's restaurant. So I was like way too young to be working here.
Right.
But I was working only the front desk. But I think it's
Right.
also great that you had your start with really cooking and baking and catering. Because I think sometimes, like me, I just do it for hobby. I do like 12 to 24 cupcakes. Like that's kind of the most I've ever baked.
Mhm.
To jump from that to do huge orders, that's a lot. But you had a lot of experience, obviously, with big orders and big recipes and things like that.
It is a different animal. I mean, we would get people in the restaurants, they come in and say that they're a line cook, and I have much respect for that work. I mean, but it's a different animal when you go to like banquet style cooking.
Yes.
Um, that it's all the same kind of umbrella, but it's like different skill
Yeah.
sets, really.
Yeah. There's just so much more you kind of have to think about that if you have never been in that restaurant industry, if you've never been in either industry, you just might
Right,
not know, which is totally fine, obviously.
right, right.
But like there were times that like my family's restaurant, we had to like cater big events and we were like, all right, this is like a whole different, you guys got to come in way earlier. It's got to be like we have to not only think about how we make the food, but how you keep the food so it's
Yes,
still fresh and it's not like soggy. Like we did like like sweet and sour chicken where it's like deep fried. It's like how do
right.
you keep
Yeah,
that in a
right,
hot warm but not have it be all soggy when people eat it in
right,
like 4 hours.
right. Yeah, I mean, it's tough work no matter what way you cut it, but yeah, it's definitely, like I say, I think I started off on the right foot for
Yeah,
for
I
ending
think
up this way.
definitely. So what are some of the things that you like maybe making for people the most?
Actually, so when I started, it kind of was like occasion cakes, birthday cake,
Mm-hmm.
um, customized chocolates and cookies and things. But really, in the last several months, I think I've really started leaning more towards breads, pastries, coffee cake, like the
Right.
less decorative and more just like hearty,
Yes.
just good baked things. I still do cakes and things, obviously, but I think I really have been leaning that way myself personally. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I think I like doing this better.
I'm with you. I don't have a decorating eye like to save my life. I've been through like countless cake decorating classes and I'm like, I just don't know if this decorating thing is for
Oh,
me.
it's so hard, and like you really have to keep like I'm not amazing. I get by. I think I'm not super, but I mean, you really just have to practice. Like you have to want it so bad. You have to practice and practice and practice. And sometimes that's not an option, right?
Yeah, like the piping, like when your hand cramps and you're like midway doing like something around the cake and you're like, oh my God.
And
I
that stuff is so finicky, like temperature, the frosting gets too warm, or
right.
you're doing cookies, which I only try to do like twice with the flood icing and things. Sometimes I
Hmm.
do like minimalist like Christmas cookies, the decorated sugar cookies. That
Hmm.
frosting is like, oh my gosh, you gotta let it dry and then you gotta go for details. And I'm like, this is just not I'm learning patience, right? They say patience is a virtue, but yeah, it's not something I can zone out and do. Like some people, I think they get in the zone and can do it, but the decorating is not, that's not mine.
Yeah, I was just sharing that I just made macaroons, snowman macaroons for my church group, and I was kind of nervous on the decorating aspect, but it was pretty easy because it's just like dots here and there, and I was like, all
Yeah.
right, this is easy enough. But I think if you asked
Right.
for more, I'd be like, ooh. My mom was like, "Where's the hat?" And I'm like, "Mom, I'm not making a hat on this dude. Like, what are you
Well, I
asking of
mean,
me?"
but honestly, people are so, I don't want to say forgiving because I don't like put out anything I'm not proud of, right? But
Right.
um people are so, I mean, you create something and it looks nice and they're
Mm-hmm.
so nice about it. They're like, "Oh my gosh, that looks amazing. You did so good." And I would want to encourage people to be like, you can try it too. It's really not, I mean, unless you want to get really crazy, it's not, out of reach, I think. You just got to
Yeah.
practice, you
No,
know?
I think a lot of people know the time and effort it takes
Yeah.
to make something, to bake, to cook,
Hmm.
to decorate. And I think a lot of people have a lot of empathy for that. And so even if it's not like picture Food Network perfect,
Right.
for the most part, I think they'll be like, yeah, this looks good. And as long as,
Right. Right. Well,
yeah,
yeah, people and people eat with their eyes first, right? So if you hand them something that looks good, and they're gonna there's like perceived value, right?
right,
If it looks good when they see it and they want it, it's like, oh my gosh, this is incredible, So there is a certain element of presentation,
right.
that people
Yeah.
appreciate.
Like you
Hmm.
said, like you don't put anything out that you're not proud of.
Right.
But if there's like a few like crumbs here and there, it's kind of just one of those things that happens in
Yeah,
life.
I kind of get a little snarky. I'm like, I'm not a robot, sorry. But
Right.
people know what they want, and you just try to give it to them. So
Yeah. So I had also mentioned that we met at the holiday market not too long ago, and you just had a gorgeous setup. And I
yeah.
know that I'm sure that a lot of people came by and they're like, I need, because like when I was there, like two or three people were like, oh, I need this like right now, like and they're like grabbing it off the table. They were excited.
Thank you.
How's it been at these types of shows? How many have you done?
So the one that we met at, I want to say it was last weekend, even
I think
maybe.
it
Um,
was.
I
Or
that was
maybe yeah.
I really only started doing them this year.
Mhm.
Kind of like summertime. So that was my fourth show, I believe. Um, and that's a big thing for me is I want a pretty table. I want people because especially at the bigger events like that one,
Right.
you can walk past maybe half a dozen baking booths, right? So I want mine to stand out.
Right.
I want it to look pretty. I want it to look, in this case, festive. Um, and I think having the catering background helps because I know, you can put things on rise. You can make high-low displays. You can kind of try to draw the eye in. And so
Hmm.
that's fun for me too, is, making it look pretty. So
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
That's awesome. So what is it? I think just a kind of question that I have a lot for these events and these big booths. Like you mentioned, it was such a big event. There are like I think there are like 60 or so vendors.
Oh yeah.
Would you have any advice for anyone who is maybe looking into doing a show or maybe has done a show and they were like not super thrilled with their success? Do you have any like maybe like secret tips that you like to do to maybe pull people in, start conversations, and that doesn't feel like that like salesperson at the mall like trying to flag someone
Yeah.
down and be like, come over here, come to my booth, right?
Right. Um, so first I would say that if you are on social media, which is how I find a lot of the events I do, um, share the event to your page, post the link, talk about it. I mean, beat the dead horse, right? Like just keep advertising it, even if you think this person is way over there, they're not gonna show up. Maybe they will. Do it
Mm-hmm.
anyway. Um, put yourself out there is like just if it's something you want, go for it, right? And there are, I will say, quite a bit of like scammers out there. So if someone has a lead on like a farmer's market or an event, kind of like what we were in the craft show, um, if you get to know the host
Mm-hmm.
or the company that's hosting, follow them, ask them if there's any opportunities. Make friends with the other vendors is a huge one
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of good networking to be done there. Even if people aren't, especially if people aren't doing selling the same things as you. Um, and people come from different places, like Green Cove Springs is a big, and that's in Clay County. It's a little further north of Flagler, but that's a big event place. You go on the different cities, social media pages, follow the city government. They will post events a lot of times. Just reach out, you got to do the footwork. Unfortunately, it's not easy,
Yeah.
but like even if you're not looking for, you go to the farmers market, on a Sunday or whatever, and just ask the vendors that are there.
Mm-hmm.
Make friends with the vendors.
Yeah, I think that's a really solid tip, and I really liked when you were saying post yourself on social media, because the whole point of especially social media and having that brand is for that brand recognition.
Right.
So if someone has seen your logo because you keep posting on Facebook 1,000 times, when they pass by your booth, they go, oh, I think I know Wendy, I think I know
Yeah.
this bakery specifically, I'll stop by them, because it just looks familiar in the brain,
Right.
and your brain just automatically feels more comfortable. Like that's why people would rather go to sometimes McDonald's than some
Right.
random mom and pop down the street, because it's just that brand recognition. It's not because one is better than the other, even though
Right.
probably everything's better than McDonald's.
Right.
But like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just the way your brain feels, and that's unavoidable. But I think those are some really great tips, especially making friends with vendors. Awesome. Well, is there any advice that you have for any newbies, either in the business or business world, or just trying to get out and being more active in their local community?
Yeah, I mean, it's the first step really is the hardest. I mean, if you're thinking of doing it, if you feel like you're comfortable enough to put your, even if like I started just with my friends and family. I mean, people that I've known my whole life, I'm okay with you guys being the guinea pigs. Can you tell me? Because then they're going to be honest with you. If they want you to succeed, they're going to say, hey, maybe you can do this, or maybe, and people have good ideas. So listen to the people that are closest to you, and just take that first step. Put yourself out there. I mean, go past your front door. It's like you just have to do it. I mean, and a lot of times, even if I give somebody, they order, say, a cake, and I give them the cake the next day, I'm like, do they like the cake? But you have to just do it, because if that's what you want, you have to go for it. I mean, I would say just literally take that first step. Um, even if it's giving it to your mom, sister, brother, grandpa, whoever,
Right.
and get feedback and
Yeah.
go out there.
Yeah, I mean, I know, especially from experience, failing is the hardest thing to cope with.
Yeah.
But I think also people will see, your genuine spirit, that you genuinely believe in either this product or something that you've done, and they'll want to see you succeed. They'll want to give you real advice that you can then improve upon, right? If like when I give something, like if I bake something and I give it to my mom, she knows that I love baking and I want this to be good. So she's not gonna like lie to me, like, oh, this is a good cookie. She's like, oh, maybe you could have added this or done this a little bit differently. And then you
Right.
can think about for that for next time. Or I liked this last recipe you did a little bit more than this recipe. And that's just the type of feedback that people will give, as long as they see that you're confident, or I wouldn't say confident, but just maybe passionate, I think is the better word for
Yeah.
that.
Right.
They can see that this is something that you want to succeed, and they'll want to help you succeed. So I think that was a really great way to kind of close this out. So Wendy, thank you so much for your time and your really great advice and tidbits that you shared. What is the best way someone can learn a little bit more about your services, or how they can order, or how they can get in contact with you?
Yeah, so I am on Facebook, and Instagram. I have my business page, OP Sweet Treats. I didn't think ahead and bring a card to show my logo, but find me find me there, and I have, my Christmas menu posted now. I post really almost every day now because it's the season, but
Yeah.
I'm on there. I use hashtags. If you hashtag OP Sweet Treats or at OP Sweet Treats, you'll find me. I don't think there's another one out there, so
Yep.
um,
And I'll make sure I'll put all those links in the description so people can make sure they click on the right one, so they can click on Wendy's and not, I don't know, maybe some random one
right.
account, one follower account that just probably has like something. There's always
Right.
something in the void of like Facebook and
Yeah.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Well, again, Wendy, thank you so much for the time. This has just been a complete blast for me. This is my favorite topic of all time. I love to
Yay.
bake, so this was a sweet treat for me. So,
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was really a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
well, thank you all, and I'll see you next time. Bye.